For shoot 'em up fans, one of the most anticipated releases of the year has been R-Type Dimensions 3, a full 3D remake of the legendary Super Nintendo/Super Famicom title. It aims to deliver the same successful treatment that the original R-Type Dimensions and its later EX versions gave to R-Types 1 and 2, this time bringing that approach to the third entry in the series. Thanks to the publisher, NN Games, I've been able to take a look at the game prior to its launch on Switch 2 to see if they've done exactly that. And I definitely got some thoughts on it all. Let's dive into it. Originally released in 1993 for the Super Famicom and in 1994 for the Super Nintendo, R-Type 3, also known as R-Type 3 The Third Lightning, is a shoot 'em up that was praised at the time for its gameplay, graphics, its level design, and its excellent boss fights. It's also well known for its incredibly high difficulty. It is one of the hardest shoot 'em ups ever made. Thus, much of today's footage is going to come from the new Infinite mode included in this release, which will allow me to show off much more of the game. Otherwise, you'd just be seeing the first two levels repeatedly. R-Type 3, The Third Lightning, demands a tremendous amount of practice from the player, and truly mastering it will take far longer than just a few days that I or anyone else has had with it so far. R-Type 3, The Third Lightning, is also the first game in the series to introduce new forces. You still have the original force, which is named the Round Force here, but you can choose the Shadow Force or the Cyclone Force. Each force has different weapon sets. Additionally, the charging system in the third game has been more refined this time around. You're able to charge the cannon to deliver a massive, powerful beam that can pass through enemies and obstacles, but switching to Hyper mode allows you to supercharge the wave cannon in order to use the Hyper Wave Cannon, which allows you to use a powerful rapid fire ability temporarily. So there's some options and strategies now that's available to the player that didn't exist in the prior two games. With that all in mind, let's break down what this remake offers. First and foremost, this is a true one-to-one remake, featuring fully rebuilt 3D graphics while preserving the exact gameplay of the original release. Despite its new visual style, the goal here is clear: to maintain the same core experience fans remember. The updated visuals are highly detailed, packed with neon lighting and impressive visual effects. Simply put, this is a gorgeous looking remake, and it's a significant step up from the previous R-Type Dimensions releases. One especially neat addition is the ability to apply retro visual filters to the 3D effects, giving the game a pixelated aesthetic that feels reminiscent of the 32-bit gaming era. While two of these filters are labeled as offering a 8-bit effect, to me, they look much closer to something that you see from the original PlayStation era. Maybe that's just my take, but either way, this is still a very cool feature. Returning from the previous Dimensions releases is the Crazy Camera option, which tilts the camera during gameplay for added visual flair. It's certainly cool, but it can also make a hard game even harder, but it's free to activate and deactivate with the press of the L3. Also, just like in earlier entries, you can instantly switch between the remake's 3D visuals and the original classic 16-bit graphics with the press of the button. On Switch 2, that's the X button. In both 2D and 3D modes, black bars remain on the sides of the screen. This is likely done to preserve a consistent one-to-one presentation when switching between the two visual styles. Now when it comes to performance, things are a little bit iffy. The footage shown here is the Switch 2 version, and in 3D mode, the game seems to hit 60 FPS most consistently during the earlier stages. However, as you progress into the later levels, especially in handheld mode, that consistency starts to slip. Now, it's not like we're dropping from 60 FPS to like 20 FPS here, but it is something that is noticeable. When the game is played in 2D mode, the performance is pretty solid at 60 FPS. In fact, I found the frame rate to be even more consistent in this mode than it ever was in the original 16-bit release, which is a nice plus. Beyond the frame rate, one questionable aspect of the new 3D visuals is that while they certainly look impressive and highly detailed and are packed with effects, these new graphics also create some gameplay challenges. I've noticed that certain bullets or projectiles, even enemies themselves, can be hard to distinguish against some of the new 3D backgrounds. At times it can also be harder to accurately judge how much clearance and space you have around certain enemies and objects. The new graphics feel like it can be hard to navigate and judge everything that's going on. You're probably going to find yourself more prone to colliding with stuff when playing with the new 3D visuals versus 2D mode, because not everything is as clear. In 2D mode, things are much far easier to read. Enemies, obstacles, and incoming projectiles are much more clearer and more distinguishable in this mode. Comparing the two modes, I've consistently found myself performing better in 2D because, like I said, it's easier to visually process everything on screen, which allows for quicker reactions and more precise movement. Looking back at Dimensions EX on Switch, I feel like this wasn't an issue. While its 3D visuals aren't nearly as detailed or impressive as those in this new release, the developers when developing that game made a clear effort for Dimensions EX to make sure everything was clear and easily distinguishable. With the new game, I feel like some of the aspect of maintaining visual clarity has been lost a bit. Finally, I got to chime in a bit on the sensitivity of controlling the ship. It's very twitchy, and it feels like the sensitivity in this remake here is much higher than it was in the original 16-bit release. That's probably because it's been rebuilt in a new engine, but it is noticeable. Look, R-Type 3 is hard. Actually scratch that. Let me be more clear. It's not just simply hard, it's brutal. It's so crushing difficult hard. Again, it's one of the hardest shoot-em-ups ever made. So having visuals that can make things a bit unclear to the player, or the ship being more sensitive and harder to control, can just sour the experience. I know I might sound a little bit harsh here, but goodness, let's not make this game any harder for the player. Some of this stuff is easily fixable through updates, so hopefully they release some updates in the future that addresses some of these things. Now beyond the visuals, this remake does sport some additional new stuff, like the game having an infinite mode in addition to the classic mode. Infinite mode is basically unlimited lives mode, which allows you to keep playing even when you lose a life. Classic mode is basically how the game was back in the 90s. In classic mode, when you lose a life, you will respawn at a checkpoint. Advanced difficulty mode is unlocked from the get-go here, so there's no need to complete the game to unlock it as it was in the original release. As you beat certain levels, regardless of mode, they will become unlocked, so you can opt to start at other levels instead of the first one. So at the very least, you don't necessarily have to beat the game in a single run, though if you're aiming for high scores, you'll definitely want to. This game features a new remastered soundtrack, and it's quite good. It's definitely a highlight of this package. The new tracks are great, but you can opt to use the original 16-bit soundtrack if you prefer that. There's a jukebox function that allows you to listen to all the songs, both the remastered and the original ones in the game. The original 2-player co-op mode from the original release does return for this remake. You can tackle the game with a friend in local co-op play, with all the same features and options that's present in single player. The controls for the face action buttons are remappable in this remake, and there's also a neat built-in manual of sorts within the How to Play section in the options menu that I've found to be a nice little addition. Look, it's pretty apparent that R-Type Dimensions 3 has been a bit of a passion project of sorts by the developer. I can see that. There's been a lot of effort placed on the visuals in this remake to make it look very good. It's been most of the focus. The remastered soundtrack is very good too, but I have to admit that I'm not really sure I can recommend R-Type Dimensions 3. I wish that the performance was a bit better on Switch 2, and that they really kept clarity of focus on designing these new visuals, like it was in the other Dimensions releases. Also, I think sensitivity for the control of the ship needs to be adjusted. These are things that can be fixed with updates of course, but this doesn't address the other things that are pretty apparent. As a strict one-to-one remake, it's based on a game that won't necessarily appeal to every shoot-em-up fan. and due to its steep difficulty, it's certainly not the best entry point for newcomers to the genre. At $34.99 digitally, this is far from the cheapest shoot 'em up available, and that price can feel a little bit steep for what is ultimately just a faithful remake. Beyond the upgraded visuals, remastered soundtrack, infinite mode, and immediate access to the advanced mode, there isn't much of substantial new stuff in terms of content here, or new features. Unfortunately, I think this release is not the home run that we were all hoping for. If you're a huge fan of the original R-Type 3, like you're a really huge fan, then sure, you might enjoy this. But for most, I feel like it's better to wait for some updates, or a sale, or both. But hey, that's just my opinion, one opinion. If you're interested about the game, then I encourage you to at least check out what others have to say too. Let me know down below what you think. You're planning to pick up the game, or you're planning to wait, or maybe you're just deciding to just skip out on the game. And feel free to chime in too if you played the original release. In the meantime, feel free to check out the other shoot 'em up I recently reviewed on the channel, Sectore, and I'll have a link to that down below. It's a challenging game too, but it has a lot of content and flashy visuals for the price tag. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss out on any future videos. Anyway, that's it from me today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you soon on the next video.